Hey, how's it going my friends? This is Yog, and today we're going to be looking at a quick time-lapse video for making this ancient Ganesha statue painting, which is situated somewhere out in a tropical Indian jungle. The painting was made in Procreate, and the animation, which I won't be discussing in this video, was created in Adobe Premiere, including this cool wavy effect. Also, for a small fee, there's a download link available in the description, which includes both of these parallax animations, which you can use for any of your personal needs, and a Procreate and Photoshop source file, and finally a high-resolution image, which can be used as a phone wallpaper. So if you'd like to support the channel, there'll be a link in the description. Thanks. So here I started with 3 sketches, and I ended up choosing the 3rd iteration. And the biggest mistake I made in this entire painting was not spending enough time with the sketch. And this mistake ended up costing me around 5 to 10 hours of additional work time. And the entire painting took around 25 hours to make, which was a lot more time than I expected. And as this video progresses, you'll see that I spent a lot of unnecessary time with adjustments like adding, removing, repositioning elements, and just overall battling with uncertainties. And a lot of this could have been avoided if I had just spent an additional hour or 2 with the sketch. At the same time, I do believe that stepping in with a less defined sketch or a plan can allow more room for experimentation. This can be an area where you can explore new ideas and bump into happy accidents. And here you can see I'm experimenting with the steps. I decided not to go with the initial curved path. Instead, I broke up the continuity and added these little passageway structures. So you probably noticed the Bluetooth keyboard on the left-hand side, and this is something that I recently implemented into my Procreate workflow. I think most people coming from a background of using computer software can agree that having keyboard shortcuts makes a significant difference in their workflow speed. So for that reason, I'm using a Bluetooth keyboard. At the moment, the only downside is that Procreate doesn't allow custom keys, so you can't individually assign each key for a certain function. Which means at the moment, you may have to jump around the keyboard to use all the keyboard shortcuts. But hopefully Procreate will fix this in the near future. Right now, I'm not using all the keyboard shortcuts, mainly because I like to keep my hands situated in one area. Otherwise, it's annoying jumping around the keyboard looking for certain shortcuts, and it just ends up wasting time. So for that reason, I'm keeping it to a limit. Some shortcuts that I am using are ones for the brush, eraser, color picker, quick menu, move, and selection tool. And if you're interested in getting the same keyboard that I'm using, I'll leave an Amazon affiliate link down below, so if you'd like to support the channel, please go use that link. So at this point, I'm going in and defining the shapes of the Ganesha statue. I went on Google and found a bunch of Ganesha statue reference images, and I'm kind of just mixing and matching ideas and creating my own version of a Ganesha statue. And initially I started painting the statue by blocking in the overall big shape of Ganesha with a dark blue tone. And then on a new clipping mask layer, I blocked in the light colors with warmer tones. So now I'm going in with a textured brush and adding some textured density to the foliage. This will make the foliage feel a little more realistic and at the same time add some variety to the brushwork, which can really bring the painting to life. As far as brushes go, at the moment, I'm only using the stock brushes that come with Procreate, and these include brushes from the categories Artistic, Painting, Airbrushing, Drawing, Organic, and Spray Paints. Even though I'm using a lot of brushes, for the most part, I would say 70 to 80% of the painting I'm using the basic round brush found in the painting section, and also a square brush like Nico Roll, and maybe like a wet acrylic or an acrylic brush. If you'd like to know in further detail what brushes I'm using for certain parts of the painting, I'll include a notepad document which can be found in the download. The biggest struggle I had in this painting was making the steps. In the end, I was still not satisfied with the perspective, as it feels a little wonky since we see too much of the top planes as we ascend further up, which basically takes away from the illusion that the steps are on an incline. And this could have been avoided if I had just spent a little more time with the sketch. Instead, I spent a lot of time trying to fix all the errors. And yes, I am doing a bit of self-critiquing. I think it's important to take a step back every now and then and observe your artwork from an objective point of view. You should spend some time trying to find areas in which you can improve. And sometimes these mistakes can be hard to spot, especially if you've been staring at the work for an extended period of time. That's why it's a good idea to take frequent breaks so you can come back and look at the painting with a fresh eye. And if you're a beginner, it can be difficult because you don't have enough fundamental knowledge to point out such mistakes. In that case, it's best to get some feedback from another artist, preferably someone who is at a higher skill level than you. You can see that I'm not spending the time to paint in all the individual trees. Instead, in certain areas, I'm copying and pasting what I already have and making adjustments like flipping and rotating them and altering their values and colors. And sometimes when it comes to these duplicates, I'll erase out and redraw areas so they don't look like identical copies. And now I'm introducing some dappled lighting to the steps, and overall this helps to bring more visual aesthetics to the entire painting. And at the same time, compositionally it helps lead our eye from the bottom right towards our main focal area where we find our Ganesha statue. So now I'm adding in some overgrown plants in the pathway, and in a way this shows some narrative. It may be subtle, but it tells us that this place hasn't had that many visitors. Because if you had people walking in this pathway, the plants would be trampled on and you wouldn't get as much of overgrown foliage in the pathway. Sometimes I'll use the lasso tool to get some fine, crisp edges, especially for things like plants. And if I'm not using the lasso tool, I prefer to use the brush pen, which is found under the calligraphy brush category. So now I'm starting to work on the design of these wooden gateway structures. I like to call them checkpoints, thinking of like video games. But if you know the name for these structures, please let me know down below. So overall, I'm just making adjustments to the structures and the steps, and also adjusting the lighting and values so things pop out a little bit more. So at this point, I'm just building up the details. I don't like to focus too much on one area. Instead, I like to jump around and gradually build up all the details. To create more of a color temperature contrast between the foreground and background, in the foreground I created a few layers that were set to overlay mode, and I went in with a blue color and made things a little bit cooler. You can take a look at the Procreate file to see this in more detail. I added some glow to the dappled light on the steps by creating a new layer and setting it to screen mode, and then I took a light orangish color and went over those areas with a soft airbrush. I basically did the same thing for other areas that have a subtle glow. The only difference could be that the layer mode could be set to color dodge. When it comes to these things, I don't have any hard formula. I just go through the layer modes and see what looks good. But usually for a glow effect, I find that either screen or color dodge get the job done. I'd also like to be a little transparent with you and let you know that I struggled a lot throughout this painting. This was a 25-hour journey filled with many moments of frustration. I had even considered quitting a few times because the illustration was not turning out the way I had wanted it to. However, I knew from experience that I would just have to sit through the painting and tackle it little by little to get through all the hurdles. And that's exactly what I did. I approached this painting in small 30 to 60 minute chunks, and I'm glad that I did because in the end, I think it turned out alright. So my point in all this is that not all paintings are going to be fun and a smooth sail. There are going to be many moments of struggle, but know that it's okay because a lot of us are fighting a similar battle. So the next time you're having doubts or you're on the verge of quitting a painting, just please shut off that part of your brain and make that extra push forward. Because I know if you just sit through it and put in the hours, you'll eventually overcome those hurdles. So now I'm building up some detail on the Ganesha, adding in some wear and tear, some cracks, and some moss. And all of these things do add to the narrative. It may be subtle, it may not be as obvious, but this shows us that this ancient statue hasn't been visited by all that many people and hasn't been maintained in a really long time. So here I'm trying to make up for the incorrect perspective of the foreground steps by adding some overlapping plants and rocks and just trying to force the perspective to make it feel like it's inclining up. And now for the best part, we're gonna add some monkeys. I was waiting for this part. I really wanted to add some monkeys. So I started with the one on the left, and then I think I included an additional 3 or 4 of them. Here again, the monkeys add to the narrative of the environment. They show us that this place is thriving with wildlife. For some of the additional monkeys, to save time, I duplicated the original monkey I painted and made some changes to them so they look a little different from one another. So here I'm just repositioning, rescaling some of the monkeys, and trying to find a proper setting for them. So here I'm brightening some of the values so there's a clearer separation between layers. Not only that, but I'm going into areas and making them a little bit softer so there's a clear distinction between hard and soft edges. And again, this helps to create a further separation between layers. Coming from the upper left hand side, I added some sun rays peeking through, which direct us right to our Ganesha statue. At the same time, this creates more atmospheric depth and adds to the overall visual appeal. The reason why we get a sense that this Ganesha statue is massive is because of the scale of everything around it. Look at the trees, they're very tiny in comparison to the statue. And to further emphasize the scale, I added some tiny white birds to the left-hand side. Again, there is a download link available in the description, which includes 2 parallax animation videos, a Procreate and Photoshop file, and a high-resolution image of this painting, which can also be used as a phone wallpaper. If you guys found this video helpful, please make sure to hit the like button, and it would mean a lot if you could leave any comment down below because it will help with the search algorithm and allow people to discover this video. Also, make sure to check out the videos on the screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.